The Biden administration offered amendments to change the international health rules at the World Health Assembly. What these amendments do, bottom line, is shift American sovereignty over healthcare issues away from America and over to the World Health Organization, specifically to the Director General, who is now a man named Tedros.
The amendments, which were actually created in HHS by our government, remove all restraints from Tedros. They take away the restraints on his declaring a health emergency in a country. He can now declare a health emergency in a country without, if the amendments pass on May 22nd through May 28th. He can declare a health emergency in a country without consulting with the country, without getting any information from the country. And if the country resists, he can go ahead and within 24 to 48 hours, he can begin to mobilize all the resources of the UN against the country, which is resistant to saying that it has a health emergency that might influence other nations. And it is a wide open power that he has. There's no definition of health emergencies. It's strictly up to him it is very clear in these amendments. He just decides his priorities on how to declare a health emergency. It can even be only a possible or potential health emergency, and it's specified. He doesn't even have to know the source or the exact nature of the emergency. So they're making him a dictator over declarations of health emergencies, and then he can mobilize many different organizations within the UN. The UN itself can take actions, and the World Bank is a part of the UN, related to the UN. So is the IMF. They could put pressures on the country financially in that manner. So this is a treasonous set of amendments. It is part of the Joe Biden, let's level America so we are absolutely not exceptional, so that we are like another one of the countries of the world, a third world country. It's extremely destructive.
On January 18th, the Biden administration gave these 13 amendments to the World Health Assembly. They didn't give them to any Americans. No one knew this was coming. It wasn't until April 12th that they posted them quietly on a government website. They were found by an amateur researcher. And so it's only been 1 month that we've even known about this.
Depending on whether the Biden administration's proposed new powers for the WHO are given to them, the WHO may be able to do crazy things like even bypass countries and bypass process of confirmation to basically do anything it wants. The Director General Tedros will have unilateral authority to do that. Unilateral meaning he is the sole person to make these determinations, and he can do it in any country he wants. If the powers proposed by the Biden administration are approved for that.
What we're talking about isn't some abstraction. We've actually watched what this guy, Dr. Tedros, would do if he gets this kind of authority. We saw what he did even without it, in pressing forward the false narratives of the Chinese Communist Party about where the virus came from, about its transmissibility, about its nature, about how best to deal with it. He endorsed these lockdowns.
Remember also, the World Health Organization could not demonstrate its independence from the Chinese Communist Party. When Donald Trump was still president, that was the reason, again, the justification they used to pull the United States out of the WHO. They gave them a chance to demonstrate and prove that they were independent from the Chinese Communist Party, and the WHO could not confirm in any way that it was independent from the Chinese Communist Party. And we saw during the early COVID outbreak that the WHO was really just a sock puppet of the Chinese Communist Party. And we've seen how the Chinese Communist Party has been treating the pandemic and treating its people during the pandemic. Those types of policies that they are using in China could easily become the global model for this, because the WHO has been praising the CCP's model for doing so.
Today, right now, as we're meeting, from from 10 o'clock to noon Eastern time. They give a generous 2-hour window, and I'm being facetious, a 2-hour window when there can be a listening session. This is what you got to know. This is not available for anyone to watch online. There isn't a physical site you can go to. You can't even watch this online. This notice was put on the website of the Federal Register last Friday, a week ago today, May 6th. As you read this site, it says clearly, early registration encouraged. How could you have early registration when registration closed the same day that the notice was put up on the federal government website? So you had to have registered by May 6th. I went on this site, I registered, I wasn't given any RSVP that I could participate. They didn't want people to know about this quote listening session. They even limited the people who could participate to certain groups. If you're in a minority group, if you're an Indian tribe group, if you're in private industry, probably Pfizer, who knows? But they had specific groups and they had to pick and choose if you were allowed to be on.
And this is one of those things that sounds like science fiction. It's hard to believe that the President of the United States and his administration are intentionally undermining the Constitution, but that's what it is. They're not only trying to bypass the Constitution and undermine it through this tortured logic that public health should take preeminence over the American Constitution, but they've put a series of hooks and political plays in place that will allow them to do this without normal review processes, either by the nation states in the World Health Organization or by our own Congress. It's shocking. Let me go over the key points, why you should care. This thing that is, remember, this is proposed by the Biden administration. These clauses are proposed by our executive branch, by our president, okay? First off, increased surveillance. Under Article 5, the WHO will develop early warning criteria that will allow it to establish a risk assessment for a member state, which means it can use the type of modeling, simulation, and predictions that exaggerated the risk from COVID-19 over 2 years ago. Once the WHO creates its assessment unilaterally, it will communicate it to intergovernmental organizations and other member states. They will then have a 48-hour deadline. This is how this is going to work. Within 48 hours and really less, they will have to make a go, no go decision about complying with the mandate, which is entirely under the control of Tedros. The Director General of the World Health Organization has the authority under this statute to circumvent the U.S. Constitution and to activate a dominant role over the U.S. Constitution by the Constitution of the World Health Organization. He can do this unilaterally.
President Trump had done an amazing thing for the American people by leaving the WHO, and effectively with this treaty that is being prepared, this is a sure way to rob the American people of their sovereignty, and this is precisely the goal. Back then, in the 1920s, this British-American effort of the League of Nations for a world government was thwarted thanks to the American people, and thanks to the fact that your Senate wasn't corrupted in the way that it was today, so that they listened to the will of the people who did not want to join this international instrument used by the globalists to further this new world order, or as it has been rebranded, the Great Reset today. And it is the reason why it is so vital that America stays strong and remains sovereign, because the entire world, the fate of the entire world, our sovereignty rests on the shoulder of America and what happens in the upcoming midterms, which is why you are seeing such a relentless, concerted effort to attack the U.S. And I'm very, very sad to say, as I've written in my letter to America, we are actually witnessing the controlled demolition of America from within by a completely compromised ruling class that has completely sold out to these globalist masters. it will have taken over a century for them to reach the point where we are now, where they are so close to implementing this new world order. And it will have taken over a century to subvert the United States of America in the manner that they have done. And I come back to this tagline of the Great Reset of the West, you know, you'll own nothing and you'll be happy. And I just want to say, this is the absolute, first of all, as if, and this is the absolute antithesis of what the founding fathers sought out to achieve for future generations. It's completely diametrically opposed to what it means to be an American, to be the master of your own destiny. You couldn't be further. The US Constitution and the agenda of the globalists implemented through these vehicles like the WEF, like the UN, these international organizations, what they want, we know, we see it. We have the prime example, which is what is happening in the CCP's China, this mass surveillance state, these arbitrary lockdowns that are going on right now, which are so atrocious. What is really critical for people to understand, what is happening right now in Switzerland, well, from this point in the world, is that they are setting up the architecture for this biosecurity surveillance world government. Right now, they are putting it down on paper, and it is imperative that people be aware, enough people be aware of what is at stake here for us to stop this, because otherwise, whether you are in America, whether you are here in Switzerland, wherever in the world you find yourself, we will be complete slaves to the people who want to rule over us. This is very much a key next step in putting the nail in this coffin of our sovereignty happening right here as we speak.
One of our other shows on Epic TV, American Thought Leaders, they actually have an interview with my father-in-law. Those of you who don't know, my wife's Cambodian, but she was born in Paris. The reason she was born in Paris is because her father was one of the few physicians in Cambodia. He was actually a physician to the king. But when the Khmer Rouge, the communists, took over, he was thrown in one of their death camps, and he escaped from that death camp. It has an incredible story on that escape and how he made it to France and made the story public of what was happening in Cambodia, this communist genocide that took place. American Thought Leaders did a full interview with him. Be sure to check it out. Let me show you a trailer of this. This is my father-in-law, and you can watch it now.
And then when I wake up, you lost everyone, and you lost everything.
Today I sit down with Nal Om, a survivor of the Cambodian genocide. At a time when anyone with a high school education was targeted for extermination, he was deputy director of the National Hospital in Phnom Penh and became one of the few medical doctors to survive the Khmer Rouge. Like millions of other Cambodians, he was forced to the countryside.
We see the flow of human being like a volcano that spit the lava. Everywhere I turn, you see the fresh grave.
He is still haunted by the day he was forced to abandon all the children under his care in the hospital's pediatric ward.
The weight of remorse still weighs on my mind till today.
He escaped and walked for 22 days through the jungle, sustained by a single thought: to tell the world what he had witnessed.
They infiltrate divide, and they come to destroy you from the inside, from the cell of the nation. That means the family first.
This is American Thought Leaders, and I'm Yanya Kellick.